The Survival Guide to Life, a podcast about how to win in life every second, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, consistently.
Multi-passionate entrepreneur, athlete, creator, and CEO. Like, if you want to go dig in the details, go dig in the details. So, but thank you for highlighting all those things, and super grateful to be here, and think you're doing a lot of amazing things on your show and with your guests. I definitely got a lot of value from the episode I tuned in on how your setup or setback is the setup for a comeback. And love that you talked about TD Jakes, love that you talked about Grant Cardone and Tony Robbins, because I think it's so key to learn, from different people. And obviously you're an avid proponent of that. So thank you. And to your point of shifts and what inspired me. So I am a big believer that I am, and we all are, limitless, resilient, and priceless when we choose to be. And as you said, a lot of times people go into one thing and, the world will tell you, oh, focus on one thing. And as I was walking through my transformation the last 7 years, and three key things really, really shifted me. Number one was my faith. Number two was losing over 55 pounds and 5 years ago and keeping it off with the help of Herbalife Nutrition, healthy habits, competing, and getting clear in my mind. And then the third thing was one of my best friends, Janelle, got diagnosed with cancer in 2013. And within 4 months of her diagnosis, she had passed away. And she was like a best friend, a sister. Now I say, she's like an angel. And one of the things she always said to me in college was, Katrina, you're going to be like my Oprah. And for those of you listening, I am Caucasian, I'm European, I am not Oprah, I'm not Black. And it would always make me laugh because Janelle, was Black. And I'm like, Janelle, I think you should be Oprah, and then I should be like your white sidekick. And she's like, no. So when she got sick and when she passed away, Amar, I really started to ask myself really tough questions. Like, am I really living out my passion and purpose? Am I really playing full out? And that circled me back into exactly what you talked about, that even though I had, dabbled in these different industries and learned, I realized that I had allowed myself to settle. I had allowed myself to play partially out of fear, out of insecurity, out of doubt, out of what will they, the proverbial they, think. And I started realizing more and more is like, you know what? I get one life. I'm done caring what other people think. I've got my vision, my passion and purpose and potential on this planet. And I will fight for that freedom. And I will fight to help others see a path to create a life and business they love, with passion, with purpose, and with freedom in all forms.
So that's really amazing, because usually it just drives someone in a darker hole, so to say. Like in fourth grade, my best friend, he had this freak accident where he was really hyper, and then his parents left him home alone, and he was trying to do flips with his karate belt on the bunk bed, and he strangled himself. And after that, we were, instead of continuing to do karate, I was like, oh, I'm gonna stop here. Later on, I was like, I should have continued to honor him. So just like things like that. So I want to say that's really amazing. And from the shift and from that what did you transition into right away?
Let me ask you this real quick. You said that he was doing flips and he got hurt or he passed away or what happened?
He strangled himself and like yeah.
Oh my God, that's so traumatic. I'm so sorry. How old are you?
About 10 or 11.
Wow, that's like, I'm so sorry you had to go through something like that. It's, you know, trauma and fear. Like, don't ever, what I've learned, one thing, Omar, is don't judge yourself for the past. You know, it's good and it's great that that came to mind for you to reflect on that, but you're a totally different person now than you were at 10 years old, and that was the way for you to handle that trauma and what happened. Like, I'll compare that in a sense like to, for example, when I walked through an abusive relationship in my early 20s,
Mm-hmm.
for years after, I was so closed off to love, like so closed off. Like, I didn't even realize it, that I went from like one extreme to the other. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when we know better, we do better. And oftentimes, like, whatever our response is to trauma, like, that's our way of handling it or processing it. And then we can always choose differently. Like, now I always say, I'm turning pain into purpose for people on the planet, or that, you know, what is this teaching me, or how is this growing, etc. But I'm so sorry you went through that. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And so what was your next question after that you mentioned?
So, what were you leaving from, and what did you transition to?
So my journey has been absolutely nuts in every single way. And I'm literally, I would say, the poster child of keep going. So I'll stop at, or I'll kind of take you through. So, you know, I went to school, I got my undergraduate, my graduate degree, and just to keep it super simple, I walked through 7+ industries. Everything from retail to consulting to oil and gas to fashion, everything. Like, I'm a big believer of try things, because if you don't try, you don't know what you don't like. And you always learn something. Like, every single experience I've had, every single thing I've walked through, you know, between all of that, serving on the Apprentice TV show back in 2004, like, everything has taught me something, and everything's contributed to who I am. And I use it all the time in some way, shape, or form. Then at that pivotal point in 2013, when those three things happened, where I got closer to our creator, you know, the weight loss between 2013 and 2014, and Janelle passing away. Then between 2013 and 14, I started sharing my before and after on social media, on Facebook alone. And my business, and at that time I had my consulting company, and I had started my side hustle with wellness with Herbalife. And in that first year, my business blew up over 25 times just from sharing my story on social media. And I was like, wow, like, two things. Wow, if I'm doing this, imagine if I create a community of transformers across all platforms and people that are passionate about transformation and health and money and business, which leads me to point number 2, that I realized fundamentally nothing is ever wasted. That I had all this experience in money, in business, as a CPA, as an MBA, in strategy, all these things. And so I said, you know what? It doesn't exist to where there's an all-in-one platform with health, with money, and with business. And I realized that was my opportunity to create it. And then I had a great foundation for my past to do that, and that present. And even though that vision was then born in 2015, Amar, it requires discipline, dedication, growth, learning. Like, even though I had that vision in 2015, and obviously I had a lot of great things going for me, but I also had a lot of things that I needed to change, that I needed to transform, that I needed to grow the character. Like, you talked about that in that episode that I was listening to about the setback, you know, the setback, or the setback being the setup for the comeback. And I'm constantly learning. Like, I'm nothing how I am today is nothing of like how I was in 2015. And if you were to talk to me, 3 months from now, or I was to talk to you, vice versa, I'm sure it's the same thing. But my point is it's constantly evolving. Like I had this concept and this vision of an all-in-one lifestyle brand in 2015, but I was reflecting on it a lot this year of, oh my God, like I had an idea of what it would look like, or I had a concept, but oh my God, like now I see like the fruit of all this work, across social, across the blog, across the show, across the community. And then it's almost like I feel like, like when a plane takes off, they always talk about that you experience the most resistance before takeoff. Like it's like I feel that resistance like on so many levels. And I know so many people do right now, obviously, for a lot of things and growth. But then I also see all this work that's happened because of that crazy vision. And then I also feel like, it's like, how they say marketing is like a funnel. And like when you start with clarity or your vision, you have like all this width, right?
Mhm.
And in a sense, I also feel like the vision and the passion and purpose is colliding to where the focus is getting super, super, basically laser focused.
So you just had to like hone in on that and like execute your vision.
You just hit on the main word. It's execution, but it's aligned execution. Because what I realized in my transformation, I didn't know 7 years ago who Katrina really is and who Katrina really wants to be and who she's created to be. But once I started dialing into that and being true to myself, the execution started becoming easier and easier, and it was more joyful. Because before I would make decisions off of the external, off of the status, off of the recognition. Oh, the world says you should go be a CPA because of blah, blah, blah. The world says you should focus on this because of blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, but if that's your purpose and you're really happy with that, whatever that is for you, that's great. But if you're like me and you're on fire because you want to be limitless and you want to like me, I want to create limitlessly in wellness, in business, and in travel. And it's figuring out, part of that was figuring out how to set that up in a platform, how to scale it, how to automate it, and then how to focus and set goals that actually cross, like my super focused goal for the month and for the rest of the year crosses across all those boundaries. But then it also goes into time blocks and everything goes back into what you're saying, like execution, but it being tied to the goal that impacts, like it's like one of those things where they say, what's the one goal that you can hit that will make everything else easier? And then again, being aligned in the execution with what you love makes it never, ever, ever feel like work.
Yeah, that's true. So, when you said you were trying to scale it and see how it grows, what were the type of experiments you had to run to see if this was a viable enough for you to scale?
Well, I already I always run experiments, period. Like the experiments never stop. So let me just put that out there. They don't ever stop. Like if you're not experimenting, to me, you're dying and growing. You're dying, not growing. Because I always point to Blockbuster or other companies that, it was working. They had millions or billions of dollars. It was working, but they stopped innovating and experimenting. So I always like to point that out. A couple things, like for me, freedom is big. Time freedom, expression freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. So in 2015, I started looking, and you know what they say, it's like, when the student's ready, the teachers appear. So I started seeing people that were exhibiting freedom in different ways, whether it was in the Herbalife community, whether it was on social media, travel bloggers, and online. Like I knew working in corporate, there were times where I worked 60 to 90-hour weeks, but I didn't want to have to do that. Like I'm highly motivated by the 4-hour work week and, Tim Ferriss and several other things about scaling and leverage. So I found around that time, I also found Brendan Burchard. I don't know if you've read his books.
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. Like I've read High Performance Habits 6 times. So around that time in 2014, 2015, I found Brendan Burchard, and I read his Motivation Manifesto, which also highly motivated me and aligned to what I was seeking. I found Shailene Johnson, who's married and a mother, and she has an online business, and she focuses on wellness, online business, and travel. And I was in both of their programs, Smart Business Academy, Brendan's monthly mastermind for a year. And I saw that they were using Kajabi. I don't know if you're familiar with Kajabi.
Oh, no. I've briefly heard it, but not too familiar.
Kajabi is amazing. So Kajabi is an all-in-one marketing platform. So immediately I saw as a student that, oh my God, this platform is super user-friendly. It automates everything. So I already knew from back in my corporate days with learning management systems and software experience, I was like, oh, somebody only has to update this once and then periodically update it, and it's automated. Like I could tell. And so immediately, like while I was in their programs, I started implementing. I started implementing my blog. I started implementing the freebies, setting out a plan, a roadmap, the courses. But as you know, even as you execute, like you set up a plan and a vision, but then you execute, and of course things change because then you have new information. Like I always say, the journaling and the thought process and the planning is just as important as the execution. But you need both, because if you're not taking action and actually implementing and executing, you're not going to find out the information. Like I knew right away when I looked at some other tools that I was like, oh, hell no, this is way too complicated. Like I knew, like this is way too complicated for me. This is way too complicated for me to teach. So I steered clear of, a lot of tools or a lot of ways that some people do an online business because I could see how hard it was. Like, I'm like, no, I want it simple. And then to your point, testing on social media, testing on influencer marketing platforms, testing in creating communities, looking to see like what some people did great, but then where is the white space? Meaning, where do I stand out that I'm really different? And what is a gap that I feel is missing that obviously I'm being called to play in? Just like you, Amar, you have certain gifts, talents, and abilities, and there's things that you're great at and that you serve in that I'm not going to play in, or I don't think like you do. So, that's the biggest thing about testing. It's like the more you learn and play and test, like I love to learn. So literally before our show, I speaking of execution, like here's one, example, like literal example of testing. So like from an influencer and social media perspective, like on marketing and, and A/B testing, I've researched over 50 platforms in the last 4 years. I've been in easily over 20 Facebook groups. I've launched hundreds of campaigns, on multiple, platforms, working with like 15,000 influencers, but I never let that stop me because it's like, no. What's the next goal? The next goal is conversion. The next goal is like, we've got the reach, we've hit this goal, we've hit this goal. Now it's conversion and it's sales. So I was literally writing down, okay, like let me A/B test doing 2 posts in, this Facebook community, like that I just discovered, like some opportunities. And like the key is like stay hungry and stay humble. And the other one was because I'm always segmenting stuff in wellness, business, online, business, wellness, business, or travel. And recently I found 4 different new travel communities that I haven't tested before. And so I just outreached to one that the creator and I had connected years ago. And I saw her come up in another community. And I was like, you know what? That's a sign, like pay attention to the signs. That's a sign I should connect with her again, because I can see she's grown in the last 4 years. I've grown. Let me connect with her and see what's possible on these 5 to 7 different things that I have in my brain and see where she's at, because it's all about freedom. And then I reached out with the same focus and intention with another community of travelers online and with actual travel as well. to answer that, I'm constantly testing.
So I think that's the most important thing, and that separates the entrepreneurs who are successful from the entrepreneurs that just live a short life. So with that being said, and just always running experiments and always learning and just seeing how you can grow and scale in all different aspects, um, how do you make sure that you're giving enough time to your businesses, but giving enough time to yourself as well, and just balancing the two?
Great question. And this is something I'm super passionate about because years ago, when I was 55 pounds heavier and I worked in corporate, that misalignment to passion and purpose spilled over into I would focus so much on business and so much on money, because literally, like when I look backwards, I was finding my identity and my worth in all the external things, and I spent very little time on everything else. And so what happened in about 2010 through 13, I realized where that literally cost me, and that will cost you since 2013 till now. And so keep in mind, this is a journey. Several things have divinely come to me to help me structure my life and my day, but also create a lot of freedom. So the first thing is that I want to share is a morning routine. I've developed with time a morning routine I call the Sacred Seven. How you set up your morning is everything. Everything. Because years ago, I was the crazy girl that would hit snooze 5 times, check my phone, rush to get ready, drive in traffic to work, and be pissed off within an hour and wonder why. Like clearly running on an empty tank. And now my Sacred Seven, and again, this changes, this is evolved. The name actually came to me the beginning of this year because I realized what it had evolved to. It's I am statements. It's listening to positive music. It's reading the Bible. It's prayer. It's listening to a positive message. It's movement, and it's journaling. And those happen in any kind of order, any kind of way. It depends on like what's happening. Once that's done, how I order my day is what I call the 7 steps to success. And it's super simple. It's 7 areas of life. And I talk about this in my 90-day plans. And it's spiritual, like whatever that means for you, for anyone, mental, emotional, relational, playful, physical, and financial. And here's the thing I realized. When this first came to me in 2016, taking a minimum, because we take action all day long anyway. Even when you're not taking action, you're likely self-sabotaging, is take a minimum of 3 aligned action in every area. So I call it my 3x7 approach. And what happens is if you have a deficit in an area and you're focusing on an area, it spills over into other areas. So for example, back in 2013 and 14, when I was so focused on losing weight and it was so new to me as far as being so consistent, obviously that spilled over into other areas. Right now, I'm avidly focused on the business and financial. So in a day, I might take 7 or 10 really focused, leveraged, and prioritized actions. But you can see how I'm crossing over every area. I time block, I take quiet time, I take time with nature. So there's a lot of ways that I do that. And then like how I track my business to make sure it's on track is 2 ways. What I call my Create 7. So, and again, this has evolved over the last several years. Like none of this happened overnight. None of it is now I prioritize community, launches, and series because that ties into high impact items into like, where my focuses are. Then media, clearing email, scaling, and new projects. Because as an entrepreneur, I also used to majorly have shiny object syndrome. Oh, let me jump over here. Let me jump over here. Let me jump over here. And guess what? This gets lost in the process and you don't end up generating momentum. Like you have to manage yourself like a CEO. And I use like project management software to literally manage myself and my life. Like I use MeisterTask. And then beyond Create 7, I have a super focused goal, like one goal that I'm laser focused on that obviously crosses into different, areas and genres. And then in my Create 7, I check myself. It's also a 3x7. What results do I have in community? What results do I have in retainers? What results do I have in masterminds and courses, as well as in influencers, and as well as in the Herbalife business? And so I'm constantly looking like, okay, what's happening? What evidence is showing up? Where do I need to create more action? And then another big thing that I implemented this year, Amar, that I think this massively helps. We are so focused on what's next. And most of us did not grow up with parents that taught us to celebrate. I started implementing a process this year that I celebrate. Every single thing, I write it down. I email myself my list of celebrates for the day. Like obviously being on your show is on my list of celebrates today.
Awesome. So no, with that, I that's a really strategic, and it makes a lot of sense from first your 7 ways to start off a morning. If you look at any successful CEO or anyone who writes in self-improvement, like one of my favorite authors is Brian Tracy, and he always says, you want to get up early, start your morning, work out, meditate, give some time for yourself, have some positive affirmations, and then go about the day. And then you even took it one step further, as in when you're coming back and the way you utilize your time, and then make sure you're checking in with yourself, because that's one component I feel like we kind of leave out or don't pay too much attention, is how did I go about the day? And then if I could do anything differently, what would it be? Then to go even more than that, having those celebrations, like you said, like we're so much focus. I even see it sometimes in myself. We're always like going through what's next, what's next, what's next. Like what you said, I call it the entrepreneur ADHD. Like always trying to jump from thing. But when you give yourself those celebrations, then you stop and pause for a second, and then you can truly appreciate everything, and you finally feel like you're not just going from second to second, that you can enjoy the moment right now here for what it is.
1,000%. Like I can tell you, I had a huge aha moment. I think it was either last year or the year before, when I was listening to something that Brendon Burchard was talking about, because I also used to use his planner as one of my planners, like for a long time. And that's one of the things that he would say, like what went well, what didn't go well. And then I realized when I looked back on my life, I was like, oh my God, that's what I used to suck at. That I would never feel, I would never acknowledge, I wouldn't celebrate like every step. And so I was determined this year to get really, really good at it and to, share that message. And Rachel Hollis also talks about that as far as like gratitude and, and focusing on the future and your vision of where you're going. But I realized, once again, like for myself and so many people, that daily recognition of, okay, I'm moving in the right direction, even if, and especially if I don't see all the results that I want yet.
So no, with that, I just had the random question come up. So when Katrina was young as a child, what was it that she wanted it to be?
Oh, wow. Everything she wanted to. So I'll give you one picture. Actually, well, it's on my refrigerator, but I'll give you one picture of like the idea of like, actually two of my spirit. One time I was at the zoo with my mom, And I literally, without even thinking anything, just ran into the sprinkler and got completely soaked and was laughing like crazy. Like 100% unapologetically me, with no limitations. Like if I want to be an actress one day, great, that's what I'm going to be. If I want to do this, I'm going to go do that. If I want to be a business person. And early on, to your question, Amar, I loved to learn. I love to create. And I love to, create without limits, whether that, again, was in entertainment, whether that was in wellness or business or dance. And then second example, in dance, I was literally in the middle of a dance performance, like on a stage in front of like 1,000 people. I was 5 years old and I still remember this. And we were literally in the middle of like where we were bending over and our heads were between our legs and looking backwards at the audience. In the middle of the performance, this tells you how I didn't care what anyone thought. I yelled out, "Hi, mommy. Hi, daddy." Like, and everyone, and this is a ballet performance, okay? So you know that they're like serious, the music's going, it's classical, all these things, right? I didn't care. I was freely, unapologetically like, hey, you know that song in This Is Me?
Yeah.
It was like literally, that's what I feel like when I look back, that's been my mantra. Like, and so when for example, yesterday I was looking at some stuff with like J-Lo. Like, I love her story. I love like what she's come from, like her background to Saturday Night Live, to being an actress, to singing, to dancing, to just performing on the Super Bowl, to being on Oprah. Like, I look at people like her and other people that are similar in different parts of their journey, that, okay, if you can be and do it all, of course I can. Like, why couldn't I? And to me, that goes for every single person. If this resonates for you, there's a reason. And there's a reason that 98% of people are in certain lifestyles or income brackets. There's a reason why there's a top 3%. There's a reason why there's a top 1% and even a 0.0001 of the 1%. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that mindset of abundance, no limits, starts way before it shows up, and the giving and serving and so many things. And so I remind myself, and I have a picture of literally myself from that ballet performance on my refrigerator. Like I was reminded like 6 months ago or a year ago to put it on my fridge. So one of the things I ask myself every day, like, even if I didn't really like play or go skydiving or something super adventurous today, did I have fun? Did I laugh? Did I have joy? Did I express myself limitlessly? So, in answer to your question, that's why I started coining, like within the last year, Amar, that I'm a multi-passionate entrepreneur. I'm not limiting myself. And that's how I saw myself as a kid.
That's awesome.
Thank you. I mean, I was in fashion shows when I was like 4 or 5 years old. Like I helped open. I remember when I was 10 years old, I used to skate professionally. I helped open the Beltline in Houston, Texas. Like, so when I say that and I believe like for everyone, there's evidence of who you truly are when you look backwards. And does it take a lot of work and a lot of self-reflection? Absolutely.
But is it worth it? Absolutely.
Like, even in the middle, to your point, in the middle of this pandemic, I went on an all women's retreat about 3 weeks ago. And it was focusing on captivating. It's a book by John and Stasi Eldridge, where we would listen to like a message, we would talk, and then within every message, we would have a lot of quiet time to go out in nature, to pray, to journal, to meditate, like whatever was coming up for you. And it was 4 days of being completely unplugged from email, from social media, from all that. And I tell people all the time, I spend at least 25% of my day focused on growth.
See, that's a big component. I could tell a lot of people leave out in the day. They're either reviewing from the past and focused in on the task ahead, what they're supposed to do, but then they leave out growth. And with what you were saying, I feel like the moment you tell yourself you can't do something, you put that limitation on yourself. You have the ability to execute and do anything. As long as you believe it, you can achieve it.
Absolutely, 1,000%. You know, I ask myself all the time, like, how can I do this? Like, do I need to do it? Do I need to automate it? Do I need to find a partner? Do I need to delegate it? Like, how can I make this happen? Perfect example, like literally along the same topic. Actually, two. Warren Buffett is a great example. He reads over like 70 to 80% of his day. He's a billionaire, but he started that habit years ago. Years ago. That's one example that I look to for a lot of stuff. And then the second thing is, one of my questions was like with my retreats and co-living and different things I'm working on in travel. Like, how can I leverage this? How can I create this? How can I expand this? Answers started coming to me with co-living, with retreats. And literally, Amar, last week, I was looking at Travel Massive. That's another great travel community. And I found a post from a company, Ventura, that was listing a position for something, but me being curious, like the curious little Katrina that I am, was like, oh, this looks interesting. Let me go and see what this position is about. Let me go see what this company is about. And they set up intrapreneurs in partnership with their brand, and they handle the marketing, the finance, the scaling, the HR, the interviews for you. Wow. With your travel brand. And they interview you and they have you, like, I'm now in like step 2 or 3 of the interview process, because you're literally a partner with them. And obviously your success is their success. They interview you, but in tandem with your results, they give you a guaranteed salary every year.
Wow.
So it's scaling a component of your brand. Like, exactly. When I was sitting there, I was like, oh my God. Like, this is more evidence of me being limitless and me having these kinds of opportunities that are literally coming to me. Like, literally, like an avalanche. Or last week, I don't know if you've heard of, I can't think of their names right now. Oh my God, I should know their names. It's a couple. They're super, super cute. And they've leveraged event space like crazy across the world.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
I can't think of their names. It's like bothering me. Hold on, I'm gonna Google it real quick. But anyway, you know what I'm talking about. Like they're leveraging event space, like events in apartments, events for like media, events for like filming, and they literally, like, they've been on several different outlets, like with you know, I think it's called Income Space, if I'm remembering it correctly. Hold on, I think it's Income Space. And so literally, like, I was listening to their webinar this past weekend, and I have access to a lot of event space. Yep, here it is. Together they run. Yep, here they are. It's Income Space. Let me see their names. And so I immediately listed, like, this past weekend, I was like, oh, let me list this, you know, this event space that I have access to on this and this and this site. And let me offer that I can also, you know, engage with wellness, marketing, media, and business travel solutions. Here they are. It's they were on Sweet Digs, and what are their names? Because I haven't listened to them since Saturday. Brett and Ashley Nobles. There we go.
So then you listed the spaces?
I listed my event space like on several different platforms already, especially in Atlanta, because Atlanta is like, one, people are looking for, you know, places to film media, as far as like lounge space that I have access to, but also Atlanta is doing a lot of things in film. Like the complex I live in, they ended up filming a movie here like 6 months ago.
Oh, wow. Which movie was?
I don't know. It was some zombie movie.
Okay.
Like they didn't tell us the name or the title, but it was like some zombie movie, and they closed off like 2 of our streets for, I think, at least like 3-4 days. And it was like, you know, just cars like in the middle of the thing, like when I looked down from the balcony. But anyway, so like when I was listening to their stuff, I'm like, oh, I could list here, I could list there, and that could lead to other things.
So yeah, no, with what you said, it's little things like that that you don't really pay attention to, but like if you're tuned in, you'll catch it, and then you can see how you can utilize it and grow from that. And I've noticed that within myself, just like when I was doing real estate mostly, now I'm in my consultancy stage and just different stages. And it goes back to with what you were saying, that even if you change or make pivots to other occupation, it's not like you're ever leaving them, because whatever you learn is only gonna, you're gonna take it with you. So when I was going into your intro, and we touched in on Fraud Guru. So my next question was like, what was that stage of your life like, and what caused you to go towards that direction?
Yes, so hilarious. So actually, let me point something out when you were saying that, because it just reminded me of something when you were talking about the signals. Somebody I came across recently, Ariane Simone. She's an international speaker, a best-selling author. She has a book called The Fearless Money Mindset. And literally a couple of hours before our call, I was listening to her on the Women Thou Are Loosed upcoming conference, and she talked about exactly that, paying attention to the signals, because so many times people get so focused, and and blinders are great, but you've got to stop and pay attention to the signals. So to your point with the finance, that's not done either, like as far as for me, like there's more coming. So how that happened is I was actually working at an oil and gas company at the time, and I started seeing, because I was already a CPA at the time and I was already a certified fraud examiner, and I started seeing where the controls that were in place, like the accounting controls, the operational controls, that's also like one of my, I guess you could say, intuitive gifts, that I was like, oh, wait, like there's so much opportunity here for fraud. So I started designing different tests around operations, around audit, and sure enough, started finding fraud. Like in the first year, found like over $3 million. And the very first case that I ended up colliding into was basically a labor fraud with contractors out in Florida. And basically it was super simple. Like I ended up realizing, like, wait a minute, the margin is super low. There's no explanation for it. Let me check what's happening with the subcontractors and their bills versus what's being posted to accounts receivable, because likely there's a disconnect. And sure enough, immediately when I started looking at it, I would see where it was all these bills that this contractor was here, but it was never posted to the customer. So when we started digging in, it turned out that people were listing people and contractors that used to be there, and they were all colluding with this subcontractor, and they didn't have any controls in play. And none of the managers ever thought to say, oh, let's not pay these subcontractor bills until we make sure that we bill the customer for these charges that we're incurring to make sure that we protect our bottom line. So that case ended up being several $100,000. And so immediately, like, the company had reached out to one of the big four accounting firms, really more like a co-partner, because since it was like my first big case, they just wanted to make sure, like, hey, let's just, hire them for like a week or two and make sure you're super on point. I was like, absolutely, because I'm all for learning. So that case ended up going to court and ended up being worked with. Later, I had cases with data analytics and analyzing data, like using a lot of technology. So the same way I use technology now. So keep in mind exactly what we've been talking about. The same way that back then I was using data analytics for fraud, for operations, for inefficiencies, and tying out data. Not exactly the same, because of course it's different, but very similar strategies, very similar approach, very similar things are what I'm doing now, like with marketing, like very similar. And to your point, what I realized was like, okay, those are gifts, talents, and abilities that people need with small business, with finance, with big business, with corporate. So it's on my radar in 2021 and beyond to create more guides in money. And in my mastermind and in our courses, like, I cover things in money and different things too. But to your point, I noticed that like CPA societies and other societies with audit and fraud don't approach things the same way. So that's still on my radar, because again, I don't believe in wasting your gifts, talents, and abilities, especially when people are coming to you with questions. And I still get things, from AICPA or with fraud or different things, but it's also in knowing when it's the time to do something. Like my focus is here now. And it's like, okay, I can't do this now, but it's still on my radar. It's still on my list. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. And the reason why it came up in my head, and like just with what you were saying, one of my friends, they had a restaurant, and they had taken a big hit with what was been going on recently, and he applied for a loan and things like that. And then he's like, I think I'm gonna get a car. And I was like, no, you can't do that. That's the opposite of what you should do. You should use that and see the way you should spend that, so later on in the line you don't get in trouble. And then he listened to me, and then he's like, later in, he's like, thank you, bro. I appreciate you saying that, because like I just was reviewing and stuff, and I was you're only supposed to use it in a certain way. I was like, yeah, I told you, you can't do that. So you always have to be rational. And I think it's also like you said, you have these certain gifts, and you, even in your personal life, you could just be using them, and like you'll be delegating stuff that you won't even really know. And like with growth, now my next question is, have you already kind of started making a plan, or how you're going to grow as in 2021?
Absolutely. And actually, let me go back to something you said, Amara, because a couple things is what I've learned is sometimes rationale goes out the window, because in the middle of COVID, in the middle of so many different things unknown, like a lot of people are hit with like many things they never imagined. And like a lot of times you'll do things you wouldn't do because you're simply trying to survive. You know what I mean? And people are dealing with so many different mental things as well. But it's good that you were able to help him. But what I've also learned is like, don't judge yourself and don't judge others. Like no one has walked, like no one but me has walked in my shoes. No one but you has walked in your shoes. And the more you know of like people's story, I think we all can use more humility, more grace, more love, more compassion, especially as we've seen this year in so many different ways, across our nation, the unrest, the things that have come to light that have gone on, for hundreds of years, like so many different things. And like along those lines, especially like in the restaurant industry and other industries, I challenge people all the time. And this is why I started with an online business, years ago, and started building it, was think outside the box. Like, yes, you have a restaurant, yes, you have less, but you could be doing recipes online. You could be showcasing recipes online. You could be creating a course with recipes. You could be, doing a premiere dinner virtually. Like there's so many things you could do. But again, like a lot of it goes to fear. So anyway, I wanted to add that. Go back to your question. Sorry, just so they're aligned with us.
Yeah, no, just because you said that, I actually even offered that to him. I was like, I'll the reason I feel like, because he was trying to sell his business, I was like, first, you didn't hire me as your realtor. That's probably why. No, but I was like, you have a restaurant and there's no brand, like you don't know, like no one knows who Endy's is. Like you need to go on social media, you need to have a presence, because that's the thing in the generation we're in right now, is social media presence. I was like, I'll do all that for you. And then he was all like, okay, sounds good, sounds good. But then he wanted to just go back with what felt comfortable. And but just in that 1 hour, I was just in different food groups. I was like, hey, have you guys ate at Andy's? Their food's really good. He's like, no, thanks for telling me. And then just in that hour, you could see how much growth potential there was. So I think that's really important. Like, right when you feel like everything's coming down and there's no hope, that's when you're supposed to think on your feet and then think outside of the box. So
no, absolutely. So did you want to add anything else to that?
No, just to go back was, have you already started in strategizing for 21.
Absolutely. So to your point, I think like just to transition to that, I think so many times people get comfortable, and like timing and wisdom and abundance is so key, like especially when it's hard. Like don't think, like for you, for everyone listening, like don't think in any way, shape or form, is my life perfect, is it easy, is the business easy? Like it's not. Like it's getting there, but it's taken a lot of blood, sweat and tears. And I think the first thing I want to say is that it is the most important when it is the hardest to pour into yourself more than ever and to take the most aligned action, because you're planting seeds for the future. Like, yes, some things may suck now, but there's two things. Either you can stay in depression or anxiety and, not do anything, or you can pour love into yourself in different ways and take action, even when and especially when it sucks. But to your point, absolutely. So funny thing, I also was updating my business plan right before we were talking, because with that recent like travel opportunity, like that's one of the things they're asking for. So I was like, okay, well, let me go back and update it. But to your point, like for 20, I actually have a 5-year forecast. So I have a 5-year forecast, from like prioritizing, things from brands into influencer management, into then online courses, then into the live events and the travel. And, and a lot of that prioritization has come about with 2020, because obviously a lot of things changed for me, as they did for, other people, that I realized, okay, where do I need to spend the most time so I make the biggest impact now and or in the future? Then where do I need to spend the second most time, planting seeds, and keeping in mind, like sometimes, like, this, you'll plant seeds and sometimes you get a result right away. But sometimes, you get, a meeting, then something happens, or sometimes something happens 6 months later or a year later. Like you never know until you know, kind of thing. But you're putting it out there in faith, right? That it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, now, or like exactly when it's meant to happen. And so I have figures for the numbers, like meaning like with brands, I'm working on engagements for wellness, for media, for business and travel, and planting those seeds. Because if, people don't know, like a lot of budgets come out for corporations and brands and sponsorships now. Like October, November, December is when board of directors, CEOs, C-suites are putting together budgets. And if you think about it, if you get one corporate consulting gig that's, a whole year, that'll usually change someone's entire business, like from one thing. So I've been increasing there. And I'm also part of like 3 different mastermind groups where, I add in accountability. So that came out of, a lot of that. Then I've got goals, like I said, on the online components. So I'm thinking like, okay, how can I leverage this? How can I partner? What I was mentioning with, some of the wellness communities. I connected with Oxygen yesterday. I, connected with the travel communities I just mentioned. And then I'm, literally, I did the travel interview. It was a virtual, like a video submission interview. And I knew, and that's where it took me back to the business plan. Because I said, okay, they said step 3 or 4 is I've got to submit financials and my estimates for 2021, 2022, and then how I'm, getting to those numbers, what are my assumptions, and then what salary am I then requesting, and, out of that potential partnership with them, right? And so immediately my brain went to, again, because you've got to have the goal, but then you've got to back it up. Here's the goal on brand engagements, but okay, how many, like I started realizing, the last several months, okay, I need to submit a minimum of 7 proposals every week. Because if you haven't been that focused and that consistent yet on your high priority items, you don't know yet what your close rate's going to be. And you don't know how quickly, people are going to reach out to you, et cetera. And the same thing with like influencer management was also born out of the pandemic, where I'm helping influencers accelerate and monetize their collaborations and also prioritize them. And some people just want to do like profit sharing for, collabs they get placed on. Some people want an active influencer manager, with contracts or the negotiations and prioritizing, so planting those seeds, setting up the platform, planting the seeds, I'm already having meetings, And then now it's okay, what's the close percentage ratio? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to your point, the online courses, it's like, okay, here's the number. Here's how many I think are going to come from the brands. Here's how many I think are going to come from influencers. But again, you don't know the exact number until you start having the numbers, whether it's Q4 this year, Q1 next year, but I have estimates for 2021. And then also with the retreats and the co-living. It was like, okay, this is what I think is going to hit. This is what this is where we're marketing, because you back it up. Here's the goal. Like, where am I going to list it? How am I going to market it? Like, what actions am I going to take? What am I going to automate? What am I going to delegate? And then if you're not hitting things, it's asking, okay, what's working really well? What's not working really well? And it's looking at it, objectively, and like, not, oh my God, I suck. No, you're great. I'm great. Everyone listening is great. But guess what? You get to learn a new skill, and you get to improve in the skill of marketing, in the skill of online business, in the skill of closing, like whatever it is. Like, if you would have told me, Amar, 10 years ago, I'd have been on shows talking like this, I would have told you you're batshit crazy. Like, I was the CPA that sat in a black suit, worked around all white men, and was super private about things, like work versus personal life. You know what I mean? Like, now I'm the same all the time. But I wasn't like that 7 to 10 years ago. And so that was a process. Like, everything is a process. Like, I equate everything to butterflies. Like, butterflies are my spirit animal.
That's awesome. And good choice in spirit animal and with who you are, because I think it's a perfect reflection.
Thank you. They follow me everywhere. Like, I've literally had a blue butterfly like on my finger, like within the last year. When I was on that retreat, I had like literally like 7 or 8 of them around me at one time. No, I love them. Thank you.
So just to like get towards the wrap up, there's still a few more questions just dabbling in my mind. As you were coming into marketing and more online strategizing, were there in aspects where you noticed that you use certain platforms to shoot out your brands or things you were doing, or not use certain ones, or depending who your target market was, did you use some more than others? And through the ones you used, were there some that you just preferred other than the other ones?
Absolutely. Great question. And I'm going to answer it, and then you tell me if you have follow-up questions.
Okay.
So I've done tons of websites for years. That's another whole skill set. That's a whole nother story, like since college, like back in HTML Flash days. I've used Wix for years. So I created my site on Wix. And then, like I said, I started leveraging Kajabi. Then from a social platform, for years, like LinkedIn was the only platform I used. And obviously LinkedIn is great because it's B2B, it's higher demographic, etc. So I made it a point to still keep building LinkedIn. And that's definitely paid off, like even including like a link to, a request for like consulting. My network's grown to like over 2,000. It's also very strategic, meaning my virtual assistants. Are you okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh. My virtual assistants, I had them reach out and give me an entire list of the HR and the marketing contacts for all the Fortune 500 companies. So I've gotten that. And, literally just connected, sometimes sent notes, sometimes didn't, if it was a company I had a connection with. Then same thing for travel bureaus. So it's very, very strategic because I already had that platform. Facebook, I mentioned earlier how it blew up, especially like in 2014 and 2015 for me. But then I noticed it started to shift for me and for everyone. Like, I think they became more ad focused. They started hiding different things. And so that changed. Instagram also grew exponentially for me. And then along those lines, I also, started expanding there and with influencer marketing platforms. But I also found that Facebook groups are really good. So I didn't discount, even though one aspect of Facebook wasn't working so well for me anymore. I was like, where is it working? And the groups have led to a lot of crazy results. And then Pinterest. So like from a priority, I started with LinkedIn, then it was like Facebook. Then I started growing on Instagram. Then I started leveraging and recognizing the power, like through Melissa Griffin and Jenna Kutcher, Rachel Hollis, the power of Pinterest. So I started dabbling in Pinterest, but really until this year, and also through VAs and their videos and their stories. And it also goes back to timing. Did I cross over the 100K, 200K, 300K mark? So like, and what I've learned is, and another thing is what I've learned is the power of being across platforms, but recognizing where your focus is and how eventually it starts to avalanche, and using tools like If This Then That or Hootsuite or other tools to automate makes a huge difference, like in timing perspective. And then recently I realized, I was like, you know what? Let me redirect the strategy to focus more on YouTube, more on tying those, videos into Instagram and into Pinterest, because YouTube is like Pinterest in the sense of it's an evergreen platform and people spend so much time.
Yeah, no, that's I like how you said, like it says I'm always using If and Then or Hootsuite, and just trying to find ways to better utilize my time so I'm not spending so much time just on posts. And like I literally will spend like say Sunday and just create a whole bunch of stuff that's ready. And it's like Gary Vee says, you got to try to put like 60 pieces of content a day. And then people sit there trying to, I'm like, he has a whole team doing this so like, don't sit there and try to spend your time doing this, because it can be better used.
Well, to your point, that's an excellent point. Yeah, he puts like 300 pieces or plus out, because to your point, like Canva is amazing. That's another tool I use all the time. Then I to either OKRelax.com, Fiverr, because then it's, hey, here's my template. Okay, VA, I already gave you a template. Like, go and create all this stuff for, Instagram, for Twitter, for Pinterest, whatever. Then you go post it. Because the return on investment on me, if you want to get to 100, 200, $1,000, 10,000, whatever your hourly rate you want to do, it's like, I look at like, okay, how much is this generating me? Then it's like, no, that's not a valuable use of my time. And then I always look at, if I'm doing these proposals, if I'm doing this, if I'm doing this outreach on LinkedIn, how can I scale that? Like, what's my next step with either a system, a person, and or interns?
Yeah, and it's funny how you even said outreach on LinkedIn, because that's how I even took my podcast. Like they were saying to message them on a platform, and I just was like, no, I'm gonna go through LinkedIn, and
Yep.
then it worked. And
Well,
then
that's how
like,
you connected with me. You connected with me on LinkedIn. But if you would have sent me a DM on Instagram, I probably never would have seen it.
yeah, because the way their analytics are. So I understood that, and I see how they're always changing their algorithms, and then there's certain things, and you have to keep up with it. And that's where it's important where you're kind of dabble in each platform, but then which ones are the strong focal points.
Yeah, and to your point, you know where and how to automate and delegate so it's not consuming your time. Because if you're spending the whole day on Instagram or the whole day on LinkedIn or the whole day on Pinterest, but it's not generating you anything in views and or growth and or money, then it's like, okay, it's time to reevaluate, like not to abandon it, but like how much time are you spending on the platform?
And then see how you can change from that. So
Absolutely. Because it's like really, okay, on Instagram, it takes literally a minute to post something. Like, once you're clear on the intention, what you're posting, engage with a couple people and get off. Like, I just shared this on my last episode. I had a surprise. I had over 8,000 followers on Instagram, and I had a surprise that my account got shut down like a month ago. Like out of nowhere. I don't know if it's a glitch. I don't know what happened. And I discovered in some Facebook groups recently, I'm not the only one. And anyway, I had to start from scratch. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm not going to let this take over me. I'm not going to let like this steal my joy or take power from me. Maybe I'll get my account back. Maybe I won't. But in the meantime, I'm continuing on. You know, I'll post, I engage with a few people, I get off. And I'm like, however it grows, it grows. But it highlighted for me even more. Like, okay, keep growing the Pinterest, keep growing, you know, the podcast, keep growing this, that, the other.
So did you ever find out why they
It's
just?
still in process. No,
Oh,
because
wow.
Instagram won't tell you. They literally just say like, and I can tell you like all my posts, like you can look at my Instagram now, like all of them are, you know, super positive. They're always about wellness, faith, business, or travel. I don't follow, unfollow. I don't use a bot. I don't like post any inappropriate comments on people's page. Like I'm not a hater. I constantly shout people out in stories, you know, like, you know, if I'm doing a collaboration or this, that, the other. And literally, like, just to like it was on my first post on my new account at Katrina Julia Fit 2. And literally, like, in summary, I got some weird notification to change my password from Instagram, which I did. Then I went on my 4-day sabbatical. Like, that's when I was on that retreat. Then I came back and I got a notification to like enter in a code that they gave me to make sure it was me. And I did that. And they said my account was going to be up in less than 24 hours. And then I got a notification that my account was being disabled due to violation of privacy and terms. And I'm like WTF, like I didn't share anything that is a bullying or anything that's like negative, like at all. And so I think it's a glitch because again, like I said, I know a couple people that it's happened to. And then I was like, I sent in, you know, the dispute form 3 times. I sent in my proof of domain that I have a legit business, that I'm not just using Instagram for play and for giggles. And then in the meantime, Facebook has responded like 3-4 times with like canned responses to where it looks like no one's reading anything. And, you know, so I was like, okay, well, let me share this as part of my blog and my show on a recent collab that I did with the influencer company. And then let me do a dedicated episode to this on how my surprise shutdown and starting over and how it can happen to you, because people need to know. Like I always preach, don't just be a slave to one platform. You don't own the platform. You don't own it. Get people to engage with you off the platform, like what you're doing with the show or on a blog or in your courses. Like pull people into your community.
Yeah, like that's important. And I like that you even said that. Like, even though you may be on all these different platforms, try to drive them back to your site or whatever it is, and try to bring that as the main point. And
Always my main point. Always. Like, hey, you want to engage with me? Come over here to the show, to the blog, to the freebies, get on our mailing list. Always. Because I know whether it's, I always had that in the back of my mind because I saw it happen with MySpace. I knew, like, you know, whether it's Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter, all of them, they can shut your account down without any explanation. And are you really going to go get an attorney and try to fight it? And I mean, and you know what's funny? I actually met a girl at the park that her sister works for Facebook. And she was like, I was talking to her and she was like, I can't promise you anything, but maybe she can help. This was like last week. I was like, hey, if she can help, great. Like, you know, tell her to try. If not, like, I totally get it. Cause I don't know like what position she's in and, you know, what influence she has and like what's going on in their systems. Like, I have no idea. I was like, in the meantime, I started my account all over, you know?
that's all you can do, right? It's either that or just let it defeat you, so to say, and just don't use it again.
No, I see the value in it. And obviously, like I wrote a book on, you know, influencer marketing like a boss. And that's one of the biggest ways we drive community, like on several platforms. Like I've got over 300 million in reach now, like with influencer marketing platforms. So I knew like, okay, I'm going to get back on, and whatever time it takes me to rebuild it, like my personal, that's fine. The brand one on there has like 900 because I don't spend a lot of time on there, you know. And it goes back to, like I tell people all the time, it's not necessarily the number of followers, because I've seen many people get 5, 6, plus figure deals with less than 3,000 followers.
Yeah, that's true.
It's what package you bring to the table as a professional, as an entrepreneur, what value you have on several platforms and in several ways, and of course, like if you've got a million or if you've got, 10K, 20K, 50K, 100K, like I was literally right there, it creates different potential opportunities. But, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, it'll happen. It just isn't going to look necessarily how I thought.
And it just takes time with everything. So, as we wind up, I always ask the guests, maybe it may be something they read or maybe from the retreat, but a quote that's kind of been resonating with you more recently, or that's been just coming up like over and over, to end on that and just touch on that quote for a little.
One that keeps coming to me all the time lately is we have the power to create wealth. And that's through actually Deuteronomy 8:18. That, interestingly enough, not a lot of pastors, preachers, people talk about the abundance side of things. As far as like, I'm not saying at all like, oh, everything's guaranteed, because it does take faith and work. But that focus of we have the power to create wealth. Like you talked about your friend with the restaurant and so many different things.
Yeah, no, it's awesome you said that, because we have the power to create wealth, but it comes with faith, and there are two wings of a bird, and you can't have one without the other, and it's a balance of the two to get there.
1,000%, because sometimes it's a matter of taking action, 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 but then sometimes it's key to pause, to reflect, and then like you said, it's a balance.
So with that, I wanted to say thank you, and thank you for your time. And maybe be on another season, you could come back on and we could touch base. But good luck, and I hope that everything you're trying to do only comes back 50-fold in what you were expecting. And I will just be in touch as well. And yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Amar. And actually, on that note, another quote that keeps coming to me, it's in Matthew, that you plant on great soil and you end up reaping a harvest that's 30, 60, 100 fold. So that's another thing that keeps coming to me, and you just confirmed it. So thank you.
Okay,
I received
awesome.
that. And then also, if you want to be on our creator snapshots, like whenever you send me an email,
Yeah.
You can go down, like you've probably got me auto responders, or you can go directly to the collaborations page under experiences. And there's media, there's different things on there for you to be a feature, like whether it's a snapshot, sharing your story on the blog and the show, and there's several other opportunities too.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'm gonna do that right now.
Yeah, definitely check it out.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
No, thank you for this opportunity. Bye.
Bye.